Hello everybody, this is Tim here again, here with another movie commentary. This time, finally, we're heading on to A Nightmare on Elm Street 6, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, or just Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Now, for anyone that's wanting to sync up and go along with this commentary, I will be counting down in 3, 2, 1, press play now, countdown. Now, for anyone that's been not keeping track of the other commentaries for the other 5 Freddy films up until this one, I'll just go ahead and pretty much give my overall thoughts on those. I rank my movies from 1 to 4 stars. The other Nightmare on Elm Street films, the first one would be a 4 out of 4. I thought it was an awesome old school classic slasher film, dark. The second one, I would give a 2.5 out of 4. I think it's an alright sequel, but I would give it a 3.5 in terms of a standalone movie with its gay subtext themes. I think it's actually a pretty good possession standalone movie, but about a guy who's like struggling with his sexuality. But as a sequel to Nightmare on Elm Street, it's only alright. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors, I'd give a 4 out of 4. It is a great sequel. A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, I'd give a 3.5 out of 4. Not as good as Dream Warriors, but still really good, fun movie. Freddy's not scary in the film, but he's still intimidating, and it's a fun movie. Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, I'd give a 2.5 out of 4. It's a decent movie for the visuals and for just the fact that it tries to go back to the more horror tone. Freddy's one-liners are a little bit too much in the movie, and you can feel the series kind of draining a little bit, or running out of steam slightly in the movie because it's starting to get long in the tooth, franchise-wise. But it's still a decent watch if you're a Freddy fan. Now that takes care of all those. Now we're up to Freddy's Dead. We got the opening here. I do like the fact that they call it Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, instead of A Nightmare on Elm Street 6. I do like that. I like this actor too, who plays John Doe. I think his name's Sean Greenblatt. He plays pretty much the main character for the first half, John Doe. I think he does a good job. I would have been fine if he was the star of the movie. The girl who plays Maggie, who turns out to be Freddy's daughter in the film, I think she does okay. She's fine. Much better than the chick from, obviously, the remake, which is the worst. The new Nancy was terrible. That's obviously the worst cast one of all. The chick in this one who plays Maggie, she's okay. She's fine. I used to think she was just kind of passable. Watching this movie again, she's okay. Sean Greenblatt, though, is good here. I like the idea of this opening, though, too, with a nightmare on a plane. The biggest problem I have right off the bat with this film, I'll go ahead and say it, this is not counting the remake, this is my least favorite Nightmare on Elm Street film, or least favorite Freddy film. My big problem with this film, starting right off the bat right here, is the fact that this is supposed to be the last film, like a culmination of everything from the other 5 films, and everything that's been going on with Freddy up until this one. And they've completely ignored all the other 5 films. We have no idea what happened to the Alice character from part 4 and 5, or her son, or whether or not Freddy killed her, and that's the reason he no longer needs people to like bring in victims anymore, like he does in this film. Because in part 4 and 5, he needed someone to bring him new victims because he had killed all the Springwood children. In this one, he doesn't need that anymore. So I guess we're just left to assume that he killed Alice and absorbed her. And since he absorbed her soul, he took her power, obviously, and so now he no longer needs anybody to bring in victims. So I guess we can just say she was killed off screen. Although there is a comic book series that was released to bridge the gap between Dream Child and this one, and it's just called Nightmares on Elm Street. Not A Nightmare on Elm Street, but just Nightmares on Elm Street. You can actually buy it on Amazon. It's 6 issues, and it takes place a little bit after Dream Child and builds up to this movie. It brings back Alice and Yvonne, and even Nancy comes back as like a spirit in it. It's a decent decent to good overall like comic storyline. It's not perfect. It's not as good as part 4 or 3, but it's better than part 5, and especially this one. I do like this whole opening dream here, though, with the house falling. And even when Freddy Krueger shows up as the witch right here, I know a lot of people hate this, but I do actually find it funny when Robert Englund shows up doing a Wizard of Oz parody. My big problem with this movie is with each Nightmare on Elm Street film, they try to do something different. I respect that. With this film, they really try to infuse it with like Looney Tunes, like a Nightmare on Elm Street Looney Tunes movie. And most of the comedy does work and is kind of funny, but they just keep beating it over your head over and over and over and over and over to the point to where it's just like too much. They just go too far with it. and that's the biggest problem with this movie. If they'd slacked off just a little bit, or tried for just a little bit more of a balanced tone, it would have played slightly better to me, in my opinion. I don't even hate the idea of this movie. Like the idea of being set in the future where all the children in the town have been wiped out and Freddy Krueger's like so powerful he's pretty much controlling the town. It's an interesting idea. It could work, but it does bring up a lot of questions. Like, why don't the adults just leave the town? Is Freddy like stopping him from leaving town? Because later on we see some kids trying to leave the town, but they're like trapped in a loop in the real world, just like Dan and Alice was in part four, except they were in a dream. So it's like, is Freddy just keeping the adults from leaving town? And of course, we find out towards the end of the movie that Freddy's actually like erasing people from existence because he's so powerful. That way, nobody will come in snooping about anybody who's missing or whatever who might be related to him who lives outside of town because, Freddy's made it to where they never existed. Because he's so powerful now with so many souls, he can just erase people from existence. But yeah, the Nightmare on Elm Street 6-issue comic series. Uh, the sixth issue is really expensive. The first two or three are not too bad, but price wise, but I think issue six is like 40 or $50. So it's definitely getting up there. It may even be like $64. The only like Nightmare on Elm Street comic I have is Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, which I still have in like mint condition inside plastic. That's a great comic. The sequel Nightmare Warriors was pretty lame though. It felt really condensed, like they had to rush it to an ending, and I think they kind of did with that one because I remember it was supposed to be longer, but they ended up getting cut short and they had to combine everything. Of course, you can see the actor is like pushing himself down the hill when he's rolling down the hill to get away from the Elm Street house. But he does a good job still with what he's asked to do here in this movie. But in the comic series, at the end of it or whatever, Alice and her son have like moved away from Springwood, but then they come back, and then they think and by the end, Freddy Krueger like transforms into a dragon and all kinds of wild stuff, and they think they've defeated him at the end, but they're talking about how he's going to come back or whatever eventually. And the town is like pretty much almost wiped out, similar to what it is here in Freddy's Dead. So it links up perfectly with this movie. But if you just want to ignore the comics, though, and just like forget about them and not take them as canon, then I suppose if you really want to link them, you could say that this character here, John Doe, is the older teenage version of Jacob from Part 5. But timeline wise, though, it doesn't really make sense for him to be the older version of Jacob, though, from Part 5, because this is supposed to be like 10 years from the Dream Child, and this would place this movie in like 1999, something like that. So the age um, doesn't exactly make sense. I think it would be like 1999 or 1990 something. I don't. The age doesn't really make sense though, because Dream Child was in '89. But if you wanted to stretch it though, and you wanted it to make sense continuity wise, you could just kind of force that in there that he is Jacob, and just forget about the age not lining up perfectly. I mean, if you just want to discount the comics and just count the movies, you could force like this movie to fit with the other five. Still, though, even if they made this character Jacob, I still don't think that would make this movie much better, to be honest. Not if it was going for the still same style and tone and everything. And of course, Freddy's plan here is so flawed. He can't leave town now that he's wiped out all the people, all the children. He's like spiritually bound to the town, and he can't leave. So he's sending the last teenager out, hoping that he'll just randomly find his daughter, who just coincidentally happens to live in the next town. Like, what if this dude like landed on a rock and didn't lose his memory? Like, what if he just like left and went to Vegas or something? I mean, there's no way Freddy could know that he's going to run into his daughter, or just happen to stop at that next town. There's just no way he would know that. This movie also really feels like they're trying to combine like Freddy's biggest movies into like one here. It feels like they're taking the idea of Part 4, which was to make Freddy more front and center and make him more of the star, but they're going even crazier with the jokes and stuff. And they're also trying to combine the youth center element of Part 3, Dream Warriors, by having all the kids be like in this shelter or whatever. Which it was a psychiatric facility in Part 3, but here they're pretty much redoing the same similar idea, but it's a youth center. Of course, we got Breckin Meyer here from Garfield and Rat Race. Lisa Zane is the sister of Billy Zane, for anybody that doesn't know. Yeah, right now, I think Lisa Zane is just kind of passable. I mean, she's fine. She's just there. It just feels like such a waste of the Alice character not to have her back after 2 movies where she beat Freddy. It feels like she should be the one to finally take him out. If somebody has to end Freddy, if they do want to kill him off, it should be Alice or her son. Instead, it's this all new character which we have no like affection for in the series because we've never seen him until now. I know Part 5 Dreamchild didn't make as much money as they wanted, but that's still like a decent movie. They still could have just done a more fun, charismatic Freddy movie instead of the darker vibe they tried to do with Dreamchild and just made more money while still keeping continuity with that flick and the first 5. The chick who plays Tracy here, the character Tracy, who's like a kickboxer, I guess. Leslie Dean, I think is the actress's name. She was also in Robert Englund's 976 Evil. If you ever watched the movie Robert Englund directed, 976 Evil, he directed 2 movies, 976 Evil and Killer Pad. Killer Pad is pretty bad, but 976 Evil for a B movie, I actually have a good time with it. But Leslie Dean, who plays Tracy here, also played in 976 Evil. She was good in that movie. I think she's good here. I just don't think the character she's asked to play is very enjoyable to watch because she's just so angry and grouchy all the time. Which, granted, she's an abuse survivor victim, so that's partially true to how some of those people do become. But still, though, it doesn't make her the most enjoyable to see on screen. But she's really hot in 976 Evil. She still doesn't look bad here, though. The guy who plays Carlos, the deaf dude, he was one of the goons in Back to the Future 2 during the future section or whatever. I think that's the only other movie I've seen him in. But he does a good job in this movie as well. I think all the teens, like acting wise, are good. I think Tracy's character is just slightly annoying because she is so like one note bitchy all the time. Of course, we got Yaphet Kotto as a dream expert. He does a good job here too, but he really doesn't amount to anything in the movie. Of course, coincidentally, Yaphet Kotto's Doc character, Dream Expert, has a photo of Dream Demons they just recently got. The whole Dream Demon thing in this movie feels really tacky and thrown in just as a way to explain Freddy's powers because they just want to explain everything about the character because this is the supposedly final film. I find it interesting that they bothered to actually make this film like a big event film about the death of Freddy. You didn't really have to do that. Like, you could have just made a more fun Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6, and it still would have probably have made about what this movie made, which I think was like 30 something million, maybe 40. Like, you didn't really need to like try to say that this was the last one. Like, truthfully, they could have just made another sequel that was more fun than Part 5, so it would please general audiences more, and just had Alice back as the main character. And even you could even kill Alice, even though I love Lisa Wilcox in those two movies, 4 and 5. You could kill Alice and just have her son be the star, and just have him kill Freddy at the end and just make a much bigger Nightmare on Elm Street 6. You really didn't need to do like a Freddy's Dead, like, final movie gimmick thing. But that's kind of what they've been doing with all these. They've been trying to do something different with every one. But you still could have done. But I mean, you don't really have to do that though. You could have just made a fun Nightmare on Elm Street 6. And I guarantee you it probably would have made at least what this film did. Of course, we see Maggie already having dreams about who's obviously Robert Englund as her father, so it gives it away right off the bat from the start of the movie of that she's Freddy's daughter. The director of this movie, Rachel Talalay, was like a producer on a lot of the other Elm Street films. She's only ever made like one film that I like, which was Tank Girl. That's a good like cult movie. That's really the only one she's made that I like. But I haven't seen anything else she's done though besides that movie and this. Of course, we have John Doe still having a nightmare of Freddy, or Freddy influenced anyway. Freddy himself doesn't pop up here. There is a slightly longer work print version of this movie that you can find on. You used to be able to find on torrent sites. I used to have it a long time ago, but I lost it over the years. I had it downloaded, but I ended up losing it. It doesn't change much. It's only like slightly longer than this version. But there are some interesting added scenes, like in the original cut of this dream sequence here, we actually do see Freddy with like an alarm clock saying, "It's your wake up call," or whatever. And Robert Englund's makeup in this, I don't really like it. It's like a passable look, but it just makes him look more like an old man instead of like a monster. But yeah, it makes you wonder because there were so many like other script drafts and stuff like that they had for this part 6, and it makes you wonder like in an alternate universe somewhere with one of them probably got used and how different this movie would have been. I've even had another draft of this script before it was rewritten into this that was going to be called The Dream Police, which brought back some of the dead Dream Warriors, but as like superhero versions of their characters. And they were going to team up with Alice's son, Jacob, and Alice was killed at the beginning of the script. And at the end, Jacob is actually killed, which prevents Freddy from coming back because he doesn't have anybody to bring him new victims. And at the end of it, Jacob pretty much like makes a girlfriend who would have took the place of the Tracy character in this version, and she would have like came back to Springwood with him from the youth shelter, and of course the John Doe character would have been Jacob. And in that script, he also had a fear of heights like he does in this one. And at the end, they kill Freddy for good by transforming into his worst fear, which was his abusive stepfather, who's played by Alice Cooper in this movie. And they literally rip the souls from his body. I like that idea for a death for Freddy much better than what we get here in this movie. It's much more. It works much more better symbolically to me for the character because Freddy uses everybody else's fears against them. I think if you took that script and like rewrote it a little bit, that would have been at least a good, solid ending for this character of Freddy. Of course, the teenagers have stowed aboard the van because we got to have some victims. I think I remember this movie being pretty short. It's a very like compacted A Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I remember this one going by kind of quick. I do like this idea for the sequences right here where they're at the carnival and stuff, or the fair, I mean, at the town, and there's no kids anywhere, but the adults are still pretending like there are kids in the town. That's pretty cool. Of course, we got the Roseanne and Tom Arnold cameo coming up right here. It's an okay cameo, but you can't help but laugh because it's Roseanne and Tom Arnold. So it kind of takes you out of the movie. Of course, we got the statue right there that says the children shall endure, well, or endure, which is basically the children shall survive. Here's where we get the replay sequence from part 4. Freddy's got him going in a loop. I like this big Freddy Krueger chalk drawing they got going on right here. That's pretty cool. But see, it all begs the question: why don't the adults just leave town? Like, does Freddy got them trapped there as well? Is he keeping them in loops as well? Like, they never explain it. I love this one-liner here, though. The map says we're effed. That's pretty damn funny. This movie is pretty much the final film in the true A Nightmare on Elm Street series, not counting like Freddy vs. Jason. That's more of a standalone. I mean, even though that is pretty much a sequel, at least first 6 movies, it's still like a standalone movie. And New Nightmare, of course, is its own like standalone flick. So this kind of is the ending for the Freddy Krueger story, or at least the basic story, even though it mostly ignores everything from 1 through 5 as well. Of course, we got some retroactive continuity here with the whole idea that Freddy had a kid, which was never mentioned until now in 5 other movies. Yeah, that that feels really thrown in. You don't really need that aspect. I'm not. It doesn't really destroy Freddy's like mythology or anything. Him having a child, but you don't really need it at the same time. You don't need it for the character. This movie has more special effects shots than Part 5. You can tell they're trying harder to entertain the mainstream audience more with this one. You could honestly do like an entire animated series about Freddy that took place after Dream Child and up until this movie. mean, that would be 10 years worth of story material. That was a neat miniature special effects shot where the house transformed into the Elm Street house, of course. We got Carlos's death scene coming up here. I think we get about the same amount of kills in this one as we did in part 5, but this movie has much more special effects shots, so it feels slightly more entertaining for a lot of it than part 5 did, or at least on a base level. Even though I like the tone of part 5 way better than this one. The whole dark gothic tone, I just like it better than the Looney Tunes thing going on here. Right now, at this point, this is a flawed but alright Freddy Krueger movie. Of course, Carlos is now dreaming. He's about to get a hell of an earache. It's been a lot of fun doing commentaries for all 6 of these Nightmare films so far. Well, not finished with 6 yet, but on the way. I look forward to doing one for New Nightmare. Of course, we got Freddy disguised as the dude's mom. Here comes the Q-tip from hell. Yeah, I hate Freddy's makeup in this. In part 5, it looked good in some shots, but it was ultimately, like, okay. Here, it's just kind of passable to bad. It looks like Play-Doh. Yeah, he looks bad, makeup-wise. He looks like Play-Doh or just some old man. He's way too pink. Robert Englund, of course, is still doing a good job, though. I like the fact, though, that Freddy made him deaf, or where he can't hear. I mean, well, made him even more deaf, to where he can't hear anything at all, and then gives him super hearing. That's pretty funny. That is funny when he's jumping behind him, but it does make the film feel very much like a B movie. I hate, though, when Freddy looks at the camera and tells the audience to be quiet when he breaks the fourth wall. That's too much. He's about to get super hearing. Now he does have super hearing. I like the idea for this though, of the whole super hearing thing. Like when he hears like a pin drop or a water drip, water droplet, you know, it makes it like almost causes his head to explode, and eventually it does cause his head to explode. Of course, he has a whole handful of little pins he's going to drop down on Carlos. I like the fact that Freddy uses a chalkboard to scratch his glove on. That's hilarious. Like a lot of the comedy does work in this film, it just pushes it too far. If this is to be the end of Freddy, it needed a little bit more seriousness to it. A good B-movie one-liner by Robert Englund. Nice hearing from you, Carlos, when his head explodes. Yeah, Carlos's death is actually good. The video game death, though, woo boy. We're coming up to it. Been having a lot of movie marathons at home lately. I actually recently just had a Robert Englund marathon, except for the Freddy movies. I didn't watch them because I'm doing commentaries for them, but I did watch like every other film Robert Englund has been in, including the V miniseries. Like pretty much almost all the V miniseries, except for the television actual show that they did, like television show that lasted like one season. I didn't watch that one. I watched the other two miniseries ones, V and V: The Final Battle, and pretty much everything else he was in. He's a great actor. He has good range as an actor. Of course, yet another person here who's went crazy, who's like running an orphanage with no kids. Why don't they just leave the town? Never explain. Yeah, I thought Lisa Zane, from memory, I thought she was okay in this from the last time I watched it, but at this point, she's still just kind of meh. Maybe I'm thinking to the end when she toughens up and has to fight Freddy. Maybe I remember her being okay in that, but I guess we'll see. But so far, she's just kind of meh. Honestly, at this point, I think I might like Monica Keena better than her. She's still better than chick from the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, though. Of course, they're trying to build a mystery about who's Freddy Krueger's kid, and John Doe thinks it's him because why else is he still alive? But if you're an audience member who pays any attention to the timeline of these movies, you know he can't be Freddy's kid because Freddy was killed in like the 50s or 60s. So logically, he cannot be Freddy's kid age-wise. It has to be Maggie. We got a Johnny Depp cameo right here. This is pretty funny. When he gets hit in the face with a frying pan by Freddy Krueger, that's pretty damn funny. Yeah, that was funny. At this point, the mystery is weak in the film. The comedy aspect's starting to wear a little thin. It's still mostly entertaining. At this point, the film is okay. This is a cool effect, though, with the colors and stuff coming out of the television while Inagata Davita's playing. That's a decent effect. And here we get the infamous video game sequence. Yeah, Lisa Zane is bland in this movie at this point. Yeah, Freddy really looks like an old man with wrinkles in this, not a burn victim. We get Now I'm Playing with Power in the Nintendo joke. Yeah, Super Spencer shooting lasers out to blow up his dad in a video game, that's a little much, but when Robert Englund still makes it entertaining when he says great graphics, that's pretty funny. When we see Breckenmeyer like bouncing and stuff and running around the rooms and everything, that's when it's just way too much. Yeah, this movie's a comedy at this point. I do like the fact that he's getting beat up by video game Freddy. See, now they're starting to push the comedy too much with him bouncing around and stuff. They're going too far with it. Yeah, they've went too far with it. Of course, the guy still thinks he's Freddy's kid, which is really retarded because he obviously cannot logically be his kid. So you're like 10 steps ahead of the characters in the movie and you're 10 steps ahead of the script. At this point, the movie's moving into suck territory. I do laugh at the fact that Robert England has the power glove. That does make me laugh. That is pretty damn funny. Like most of this movie is pretty funny at a lot of points, but and also a lot of other points they overdo the comedy. But at the same time, they push the comedy so much that it almost feels like they're trying to make a comedy with this movie, which is a complete wrong idea for a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, for a Freddy film. Like I was fine with comedy Freddy in like part 3 and 4. 3 it was perfectly balanced. 4 it went a little overboard, but it was mostly still Freddy was still treated with respect and he was intimidating. Here it's almost like he's doing a stand-up routine. He is still funny here, Robert England is, but they're just pushing it way too far. I do like the fact that Leslie Dean Tracy's character just kicked Freddy in the nuts. I don't like the fact though that she's like been trained to be like a dream warrior by Yaphet Kotto's character Doc, and now she can enter dreams like anytime she wants to or other people's dreams. Like she has Kristen's power from Dream Warriors when those were like specific powers given to specific people, but now anyone can train to use them or to get them. I find that really lame, and I think that undermines part 3. Of course, we got more of the more house gags with Sean Greenblatt's John Doe character, which are still amusing. This time the house flies off and leaves him, which I did find funny. Of course, we got the lame joke, nothing is going to make me get off this bed, and then it catches on fire. This movie is way too Looney Tunes. Of course, it's supposed to be a surprise that John Doe is not Freddy Krueger's son, but like I said, if you pay any attention to the timeline, he can't possibly be his son. It's so obvious who Freddy's kid is in this movie. The mystery does not work at all. I do like Freddy pushing a thing of spikes, though, underneath John Doe, like Wile E. Coyote. That does make me laugh because of Freddy Krueger's reaction when he does it, like he acts like he's tired. That did make me laugh. Yeah, at this point, this movie is a passable, like, all-out comedic B movie, which does not feel like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie or a Freddy movie at all. The ending of this film was originally in 3D. Makes me wonder why they just didn't shoot the whole film in 3D. Because this is a very 3D shot coming up here where the springwood barrier gets broken. Yeah, the mystery is so poor in this movie. I kind of do like the fact though that Freddy has grown so powerful he can like erase people from existence because he has so many souls. That does show how his power increases with the more people he absorbs. Yeah, Yaphet Kotto's character has been completely pointless in this movie. Just only here for exposition. By this movie, it just really feels like the franchise just doesn't have much more to give. But if you look up some of them other unused drafts, like some of them had some cool ideas. They could have made a good sixth movie. I do like that we get to see Robert Englund like out of the makeup as human Freddy Krueger. He does a really good job, just like being creepy as the human version. You probably could have done like an Elm Street prequel movie and done it successfully with him in the lead at this point in time, while he's still pretty young. But at the same time, you don't necessarily need an Elm Street prequel because we see pretty much everything we need to see about Freddy's past, so you really don't need one. But it would probably work as like a mini series for TV though. Another thing is that in all the other movies, they made it seem like Freddy was just kind of like this kind of loner dude or whatever who had like no friends or anything and just kind of probably lived by himself and all that, who people probably talk to every now and then. This movie goes for a more like realistic murderer in suburbia type thing because if Freddy Krueger was like this loner dude or whatever that people just kind of didn't really have contact with and all that or didn't really talk to or anything, then he would obviously be the prime suspect automatically if all this stuff was going on with all these children disappearing. Here, though, it makes a little bit more realistic with him being like this suburban killer with a family and all that. But at the same time, it doesn't really fit the vibe that you got from the character with the other five movies. I do like the fact that they're explaining more backstory for the character, though. Some people don't like the fact that Freddy, in this film, we find out that Freddy also killed all the children in Springwood after his burning, not just because he was burnt, but also because the fact that they took his daughter away. I don't mind it. It doesn't really change anything too much for me. It's not, once again, it's not something that's really needed for the character, but I don't think it takes anything away from him. Yeah, now that the Maggie character is getting more to do, I think she's okay. She's starting to get in the realm of finally of being like okay. This Tracy nightmare sequence, though, about her molesting father, does not belong in this movie at all with the silly tone that this movie has. This is a good, scary nightmare sequence, but it doesn't fit the Looney Tunes vibe of this movie at all. Yeah, this sequence so does not fit this movie. This would be right at home, though, in like Nightmare 3, though. I do like the fact that she beats the hell out of her molester father. I like some of Robert Englund's one-liners here as Freddy, though. They're once again, he's still pretty funny. I like that she's smart enough to wake herself up. Her character is more interesting at this point in the movie, even though she is slightly annoying. At this point in the movie, she's more interesting than Maggie, than the lead. Yeah, Tracy probably could have been the star of this movie. Like, if you just eliminated the whole child subplot, like Freddy Kid subplot or something, and just had it like be another way he's trying to escape from the Springwood town, and just made Tracy the star, this probably would have been a more interesting movie. Of course, we got Freddy doing cartwheels here in Kung Fu Kicks. Once again, they keep pushing the comedy over and over. Robert England does a great job in this movie, though, for what he's asked to be and to do with Freddy in this film. Of course, he got close to Freddy after Freddy was knocked down with the ball bat, which, of course, we know it's going to be a jump scare. I love this scene though where he's slicing off his fingers and he says they even tried holy water and he gives like Yaphet Kotto the finger. That is so funny. Like I said, this movie still has some entertainment value. The only one with no entertainment value is the remake. It probably would have been a more interesting twist if Yaphet Kotto was the child. We're coming up here on the climax of the movie. I hate the way that they kill Freddy in this movie. I hate the idea for it. This is supposed to be the final Freddy film, and the director, Rachel Talalay, had to come up with a new idea or for a new way to kill Freddy that would seem like definitive. And the only thing she could come up with was just killing him in the exact same way they did in part one. That is so lazy to me. It's like they just couldn't come up with anything, so they just threw the 3D gimmick on top of it to try to make up for it. It does not work for me at all. I will say this: I have this movie with the ending in 3D on the DVD collection. The 3D does make the ending more fun for me, but still, the whole idea of how they're going to defeat Freddy is so damn lazy. I would have loved it if it would have been, or would have liked it if it would have been the idea from the Dream Police script where they kill him by using his own fear against him. That is such a much more interesting idea than what they're doing here just by retreading the other movie. Like any goodwill that this movie has at this point is just suddenly colossally brought down by trying to repeat the exact same idea from part one. But we are nearing the climax of the movie. We're pretty much ending the third act and heading to the climax here. He's about to go inside Freddy's brain. I do like the fact that they made the ending in 3D because it at least adds something new and fresh for the series for a part 6. Right here, when the Dream Demons are alive on the poster, that is actually a little creepy, but when you see them like floating around in Freddy's brain and stuff, it's really corny. Yeah, the Dream Demons like flying around laughing or whatever. It's so corny. Maybe if they would have made the Dream Demons like scarier or whatever, that would have been cooler. I do like the fact that Freddy has like a home security system inside his brain that like protects different parts of his brain. That is kind of a neat way to visualize stuff from inside the mind. Now we're seeing some Freddy flashbacks of him as a child about to kill I believe, guinea pig. Of course, here comes the Alice Cooper cameo. That's Freddy's abusive stepfather. Of course, Freddy would have already had mental problems because his father would have, would have been one of the 100 maniac rapists. So he would have already have had some genetic mental problems, which are made worse because his father is abusive Alice Cooper, or stepfather is. I wish they would have showed the Alice Cooper murder though. That was a little bit lackluster. I like that they're showing Freddy's burning though until these crappy dream demons show up. The dream demons just feel so tacky. Of course, if you notice, human Freddy keeps saying that people had to take their medicine or whatever when he kills them, like when he kills his wife, which is what his stepfather Alice Cooper said to him when he was beating on him. So it lets you know like where he got that from, which is kind of funny. Yeah, I remembered Maggie in this movie, her character being like okay, but she's really not. She's still like she had some okay moments, but overall she's still just kind of passable. Still better than the chick from the remake though. But yeah, I think I do like Monica Keena better than Lisa Zane, who I do remember watching recently and remembering her being like okay, but not by much. I don't think she's better than Lisa Zane by much, to be honest. Of course, they've brought Freddy into the real world, which again is so lazy. It's just a retread of the other movies. Like, there's so many different like ideas you could do for killing Freddy because he's a dream creature. Like, why not come up with a way to kill the dream demons themselves? That way, it really would feel like the end of Freddy, since those are what gave him his power. Even that idea would be better than what they do here. Once again, it's cool to see Robert Englund outside the makeup, and he still does like a great job as Freddy, even without the makeup. I like the fact she knocks his glove off, though. Of course, Freddy's randomly crawling on the ceiling for some reason, which they don't explain at all. I do like when she bites Freddy's nose right here. That is funny. Of course, Maggie's character becomes a ninja throwing star expert right here, just randomly out of the blue. Which again goes along with this film being like a really over the top, silly B movie. Of course, she's about to stab Freddy with his own glove, which they did do in part 3. Nancy did it already. But I always like kind of seeing Freddy get his own comeuppance with his own weapon. Freddy's about to blow up because of the pipe bomb. Yeah, and that's the end of Freddy's Dead with the cheesy last line of the movie, Freddy's Dead. This is a really cool like ending montage for the movie though, where it shows clips from all the other better Nightmare on Elm Street movies. So for those keeping track, number 1, 4 out of 4, awesome movie. Number 2, as its own standalone movie, I'd give it a 3.5. It's a pretty good gay subtext possession movie. As a sequel to a Nightmare on Elm Street or as a Freddy Krueger movie, I'd give it a 2.5. It's all right. It's a big step down from Part 1, but it's still all right. It's all right time killer, watchable movie. Part 3, 4 out of 4, great sequel. Part 4, 3.5 out of 4. It is a really good, fun movie, fun B-movie time. Part 5, I'd give it a 2.5 out of 4. It is a decent watch. I like it. I don't love it. It doesn't blow me away, but it's a decent watch. Um, this one, Part 6, I'd give it a 1 out of 4. This movie's actually dropped even more from the last time I saw it. Yeah, 1 out of 4 for Freddy's Dead. This is the only, not counting the remake, which I don't really count. I hate the remake. The remake is worse than this movie, but not counting the remake, which would be a 0 out of 4, this is a 1 out of 4. This movie sucks. It's not the worst horror movie I've ever seen, or even the worst slasher movie I've ever seen. But it's still a 1 out of 4 for a Freddy Krueger movie, and for what's supposed to be the end of the Freddy Krueger franchise. This movie sucks. It's a 1 out of 4. It has some good stuff going for it, and even some really funny scenes. But by the end, it just keeps pushing the comedy and pushing it to the point where Freddy Krueger does die. His ending death is treated as a joke. Um, the only way I can see really enjoying this movie is if you really just embrace the fact that it is just meant to be a stupid, silly, over-the-top B movie. Like, if you just embrace that, you are fine with that, then I can see you having a good time with this movie because of that. But as a Freddy Krueger movie, this is the worst of the actual real series. The remake's not part of the real series, in my opinion. This is the worst easily. But this montage at the end is cool. Yeah, Maggie's character has some okay moments, but overall, Lisa Zane is just passable. Um, Robert Englund once again does great, even though they let him go way too crazy here. But that's what they wanted him to do. He's good at it, but it just does not fit what should be the ending of the Freddy Krueger franchise. Yeah, overall 1 out of 4. This movie sucks. And there's not really much else to say on it. They should have chosen one of the other scripts, or at least rewrote one of the other drafts to make a better movie. Even the Dream Police one, like I said, would have been easily better than this movie. Yeah, so thank you guys for stopping by for this commentary, and I will see you again with the new Nightmare commentary.